everybody and welcome to Flock Talk. Today we are going to be deep cleaning the new bird room. I have made a few different changes to the routine with switching to the new room as well as using a couple different cleaning products. So we're going to go over all the little things that have to change in this new space and how I'm going to be modifying my strategies to clean this room effectively. Now this is the weekly clean. This is not the super in-depth monthly clean, which would require taking the ropes down and soaking them. And this is not the daily clean, which is basically just sweeping and spot cleaning stuff. This is what would get done at the end of each week. So since I do not have an established routine with this room yet, I'm kind of making it up as we go along this time. Usually I have a pretty good system in place. This is a new room, so I don't have a system in place yet. But what I'm going to do is just start with something on the walls. I'm choosing to start with the bath corner just because I want to. So I'm just going to take my spray and I'm going to wipe down all of the rocks. My main function for this is just to get rid of dust. The rocks themselves aren't dirty. Newt hasn't been hanging off of them. There's no poop on them at all, but they can gather dust. So I'm just doing this to get the bulk of any dust on it and just be able to stay on top of it. I'm not actually seeing any visible dust, but that doesn't mean that it's not there. So it's good just to be preventative, wipe it down, keep it clean. I'm going to do the exact same thing to the leaves that are around this as well. I'm pretty surprised with these leaves. I thought they were going to gather a lot more dust when I initially set them up, but there's no dust on them at all so far, so I'm really happy with that. But the exact same process, I'm just using a microfiber cloth and my all-purpose cleaner to spray the leaves down just to make them a little bit damp and use the microfiber cloth to just collect any dust that might be sitting on the leaves, whether or not I can actually see it, and then we will turn our attention to the actual tub itself. So this tub is going to make its way upstairs to be cleaned. The tub water does get changed out every 1 or 2 days. Depending, every day I usually take a little peek in there and see if Newt has decided to eat his food over it. If there's any crumbles or food bits, then I will dump out the water and change it. Otherwise it gets swapped out every other day or so. But at the end of the week, this tub is going to get thoroughly deep cleaned, so we're just going to move this to the side and it's going to go upstairs to sit in the sink for a more thorough cleaning. Now on the shelf we can see a little bit of some dried water spots, so we're just going to go ahead and wipe those off, and that's also going to help get rid of any particulates of dust. This is honestly a pretty quick process. I expected it to take longer with the amount of crevices and stuff in the rocks, but this entire area went by pretty smoothly and quick since it's mostly just dust removal. There isn't a lot of poop or actual debris. So from here I'm deciding just to head on over to the windows. I'm not really too worried about them. This is mostly just for dust. There are some streaks on them. I still haven't really found a good way to clean windows with bird-safe cleaners that doesn't produce some streaks. I just don't worry about it too much and I do my best to kind of wipe it clean. I'm making sure to get the very top of the window where dust is going to settle and sit on it, and then along any of the edges where there might be vegetable splatter, since this window is very close to the vegetable corner. And while I'm over here, I'm going to take a look at the wall perches, just look for any signs of poop and give them all kind of a quick little wipe down. For some of these perches I'll spray directly on them, for others I might spray the cloth and then wipe them down. Just depends on the texture of the perch, which is easier. Just removing any dust and making sure to remove any poop that may have landed. During this, I'm also taking note of if there is a particular perch that is consistently getting pooped on, because if that is the case, it means I may need to move some stuff around and arrange it so that way it's not getting dirty as quickly. In this case, I'm not having too much of that, so I think we're doing pretty okay with the layout, and I'm not too concerned about needing to move things. Up on the top of the wall, we have the little shelf that holds the security camera and the UV light still. I'm gonna move that light. I don't like where it is. I just haven't figured out where yet still. And I'm just wiping it down primarily for dust. There isn't any poop or seed debris up here, so I'm just gonna give it all a quick wipe down, keep the dust levels low, and give it a quick clean. Just making sure to get in all of those little cracks and crevices that any dust could potentially settle, and making sure that the lens of the camera stays clean and streak free so I can keep an eye on the little noodle boy in the room. The veggie corner, I try to make an effort to wipe down at least with a dry cloth every single day to keep general bacteria down. In this instance, Newt has just finished eating his breakfast vegetables, so that is why this is as messy as it looks right now. This is a plastic sheet that is really easy to wipe off, so I just spray it down, give it a really quick wipe, and then I usually do a second spray to let it soak and get those particularly sticky bits off a little bit easier. And just like that, it doesn't leave any staining or vegetable debris behind. It ends up being perfectly pristine and white and ready for Newt to finish off the rest of his vegetables. And we are almost done with everything that's hanging out on the walls. We just have the cage that is left. Newt only really sleeps in this cage. That's all it's particularly used for. But for that reason, there isn't usually a lot of debris in these cages at the end of the week. It's usually pretty clean, but I still do opt to change out the papers and give it a quick wipe down on the inside, again, just to keep dust down. Paper towels are pretty good at collecting dust, so it's just another way to keep the air quality better, more than it is for poop removal, honestly. And I'll also just give the bars a quick wipe down. Sometimes there's feathers stuck to them, sometimes there's poop stuck to them, and it's, again, just a good way to get rid of dust. Newt also likes to bring his vegetables over here and wipe his beak on the bars, so I can remove all that vegetable goo that he could have put on there throughout the week as well. Next, I move on to everything that is hanging around the room, and I basically just spot check. So I'm gonna go over every toy, take a good look at it, and see if I find any evidence of poop, and I'm also checking for leftover food in the foragers. I usually go through all the foragers every single day anyways, since I like to monitor and make sure that Newt is actually finding all of his food in the foragers and eating the amount that he's supposed to be. But I still do a quick double check to make sure that there's no pellets hiding out. If there are, I will dump those foragers out, give them a good clean, get rid of any pellet debris or dust that might be in there, and then hang them back up. But otherwise, I'm primarily looking for poop. Any toys that have poop on them, I'm just going to take down and set aside to move them upstairs for cleaning later on. I'm going to do the same thing to any of the ropes or hanging perches that are around as well. In this case, I'm not going to be removing them off of the ceiling. If I find some poop on it, I'm just going to spray my cleaner onto my cloth and then use that to lightly pick the poop off and soften the rope a little bit to scrub it clean. If this was a monthly deep clean, I would remove this whole net from the ceiling and it would be getting soaked in the bathtub for a full deep clean. This is just a weekly quick clean, so it's just making sure that there isn't excess debris building up. Next, we have the rotating bowls. So all of these need to come out in order to be properly cleaned. I do leave a set of bowls in here at a time for right now, just so that way there is an easy access point of food. Right now, since this is still a new space for Newt, I am leaving some pellets and water in these bowls, so that way Newt has easy access on the off chance that he's feeling a little overwhelmed in the room. He doesn't have to go foraging to find it. He can just go to these bowls. I've been aware that he knows that these bowls have food in them, and it's just an easy access point for him while he fully settles into the space. He hasn't really needed it, and he's been doing really good, but it's still just a precaution I'm choosing to take. I don't want to pull all of these bowls out of here and then have this be the day that Newt feels too stressed out to forage. So I'm going to leave them in there as a safety thing, and once a set of bowls is complete and clean, I'll come back and I'll switch out the other ones. I'll also take the time to wipe down the actual black holder that is holding the bowls in place, because on the other side there is a little bit of a lip that when they eat will put crumbs on top of, so I just want to make sure that that's nice and clean. The last thing I'm going to do is the actual walls themselves. Again, there isn't usually a lot of debris that gets on these. Every now and then you might find a magic poop that has been able to fling itself to a wall, but for the most part this is just to keep dust levels low, make sure that we're getting everything good and clean. It'll also help get rid of any water stains if Newt's been really splashy with his bath. And over by the vegetable corner wall, you might get the occasional vegetable that's been flung a little too far and has hit the wall. So we're just looking for things like that and generally trying to keep dust down. The single most important part of this room is the filter, and a filter is only as good as it is clean. I do apologize, my wife filmed this section, so it is filmed sideways, but you get the point. I usually clean the air purifiers with regards to whatever the manufacturer's instructions are, but I'll do it slightly more intense than what is recommended, since their recommended cleaning will be to keep the air quality suitable for humans, not necessarily for sensitive birds, so I like to do things just a little bit more frequently than what's recommended. So I opt to wash this pre-filter, this black sheet on the outside that you can see is absolutely covered in dust, and I'm going to replace it and just throw it in the wash every single week. The pre-filter basically just catches the larger particles of air. This big round white filter is the actual HEPA filter that catches all the tiny microscopic particles that are more realistically going to be doing harm. But this just keeps the filter clean and able to be processing through the air as quickly as it's supposed to, and rotating the air efficiently. I do have 2 of these pre-filters, so there isn't a period of time where the filter's off for a really long period. So I basically just remove the one, put the clean one on, while the other one is in the wash ready to go, and it'll be dry and ready for next week. I will also take this opportunity to take a damp cloth and wipe out the inside of the filter, as well as the exterior and the top, just again to keep the dust down. And you'll also find that dust and debris tends to gather down on the inside base of this filter system. It's really easy to wipe up since they did round the base, but I just give it a quick wipe. Once I am satisfied that everything else in this room is clean, then I will move on to the floor. There's no point in cleaning the floor first when you're going to be cleaning the walls and knocking debris down onto the floor, so it's always the very last thing that I do for the weekly cleans. What I choose to do is actually just go over with the broom first. This is a little different than what I used to do in the old room, and that is because this floor is very, very slick, and so when I actually sweep, oftentimes the clumps of poop that are on there will just brush off, and it'll just leave me with the white urates, which are very easy to mop off and clean. And then if I sweep and I still see that there's a couple chunks of the black or brown poop visible, then I will take my razor scraper and very lightly scrape those off. I used to let them soak for a really long time, but I have found this to be significantly faster and more effective. I do just need to be really careful on this floor though, because the vinyl flooring we have in here is quite soft and squishy. I don't want to accidentally cut the flooring, so I just do need to be extremely delicate with when I use it. But as I said, this floor is really, really slick, so it doesn't take a lot of pressure to just pop the poops off and leave me with the easy to wipe urates behind. Mopping the floor takes a little bit of time, and I'm probably going to change my strategy since this is a much bigger floor space than the old room. So for right now, I'm doing it the same way I used to. I have my cleaner in this bottle and I'm spraying it onto the floor. I'll let it sit for a couple minutes just to really soak in, and then I'll just take a washcloth and wipe it all down. It usually wipes off pretty quickly. Every now and then you have a stubborn bit or a hunk of vegetable that's a little more stubborn, but for the most part, it's a pretty quick process. It takes me maybe 10 minutes to fully do the floor. Once it's fully cleaned, I will go back over it again with a very light coat of the cleaner and a brand new clean cloth, just to pick up any residue I may have missed, kind of dry off the floor, make sure there's not going to be any streaks, since as you go around the floor, your cloth will have been getting dirty, and it might not be quite as clean as you think it is, so I just go over it a second time to be a bit more thorough. Now the cleaner I've decided to use this time, I used to use exclusively vinegar and water, and then somebody told me that vinegar is not as thorough as of a disinfectant as we think that it is, and so I ended up looking into it, and they are right. Vinegar does not clean as well as we think it is. So although it is a bird safe cleaner, and it does do some level of cleaning, it's not a true disinfectant. So there's going to be stuff left behind, there's going to be bacteria left behind. So I've decided to switch cleaners to an all-purpose cleaner that is generally considered to be safe by the bird community. What I am using is a Mrs. Meyer's cleaner, and that's a little hit and miss. You do need to make sure to read the ingredients if you opt to use them, but they are a plant-based cleaner company, so as long as the plants that they're using in that particular formula is safe, then you are good to go. They do actually have some scented formulas that are bird safe as well, since they are all plant derived. A lot of their citrus ones and their lavender ones can be safe, but you need to make sure that you read the ingredients and make sure that there's nothing hiding in there, because if a formula happens to have something like, say, tea tree oil, that's incredibly toxic for birds, right? So even if it, as a general, is a safe cleaner, you always want to double check. And some of their formulas do have perfume listed instead of a natural ingredient, so you just need to be a little careful with exactly which one you're getting. But they do have some options, and the overall forums seem to suggest that this company is okay as long as you are getting the correct ones. So I do opt to use this brand now, and I just make sure to dilute it an extra time, just to make sure that there's even less scent, just to be safer on my end, and that's what I'm deciding to use now. It's been working really, really well for me. I haven't seen any issues bird-wise at all, so it's definitely going to be my primary deep cleaner. I still do use vinegar on things that the birds are going to be touching and chewing, so anything that is a toy or even a perch that I think they're going to end up chewing into, I will still make sure to use vinegar, because if it's going to be in their mouth and potentially end up getting swallowed, I'd rather it be vinegar over a cleaner, even if it is considered safe. And then throughout the room, I will have been using this Mrs. Meyer's cleaner for like the floor and the walls, the things that aren't very likely to end up getting swallowed. Lastly, we are going to pop upstairs real quick. We're going to take all of those things that I had set aside earlier and we're just going to soak them. These will have been sitting in here for basically the duration of me cleaning the rest of the room. And this is just some unscented bird safe dish soap and some water, some hot water. And I'm going to let the majority of these things soak. What I'm not going to soak is some of the toys. And the only real reason for this is that if a toy is made of wood or paper, the wood is going to warp, especially if you have ones that have like curled or coiled pieces. Those will end up straightening out if you soak them, and it's going to ruin the toy. And then obviously anything that's paper or cardboard is going to get trashed if you soak it in water. And anything that's dyed or colored, if it is dyed in a bird-safe way, is going to completely leach out of the wood that's dyed. So I can't really soak those ones. Once everything else is thoroughly cleaned and set aside to dry, I will drain the sink and just use a little bit of warm water and a sponge to kind of gently scrape off these spots that are dirty. With everything clean, dried, and ready to go, we can pop it all back into the room. We're going to set up Newt's bathtub first. I will run it a few times upstairs first just to make sure that there's no debris that comes shooting out of the spout. Sometimes even with cleaning and excessive rinsing, there can still be some debris stuck in there when you run the filter. So I just run it a few times, dump out the water, make sure that it's good and not going to have any particles. And then we set it up down here for Newt, and he is very excited to hop on his tub, obviously. We will move on to his Forager, the one on the ground. That one, I just make sure to lock all the pieces back in place and plop it down. With the toys, I usually leave them aside, partly because they just take so long to dry. So what I'll do is I will just leave those toys out, and however many toys I pulled out is however many new toys I will go grab from a bucket in the back room. I will also use this as an opportunity to rotate the toys a little bit. So I'll put some toys in the spots where the ones I had taken down used to be, and then I'll go around and I'll move a couple of the toys around. I won't move too much since I did just do a huge deep clean. I don't want Newt to get stressed out with all the activity and changes that have gone on. He doesn't usually, but it's still just a bit of a precaution. So I'll just move a couple of toys around to make things a little bit new and different, and it'll help him kind of explore a bit more and make things less boring. If all of his foraging toys and stuff are always in the same place, then it kind of takes some of the fun out of the actual search and find part of the activities. So this is just a good opportunity for me to switch up the enrichment a little bit and keep the toys rotating and changing on a weekly basis. That is it. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you have any other suggestions of cleaning products to try out, please feel free to recommend them down below. I'm always looking for new alternatives to try as we learn more towards what is and is not fully disinfecting and bird safe. But for now, that's going to do it for today. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you all in the next one. Bye!